Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
Hi everyone, it's Bayana, Robyn, and Porshèa embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. Today, we are really excited to be joined by Bethany Baptiste, debut author of The Poisons We Drink. Hi, Bethany.
Hello, how are you? How is everyone?
Good. Excited
Doing
to
our
best.
talk to you about this story.
Please let me know if I sound too much like a kindergarten teacher. Like, let me know if I'm a little bit too. I can tone it down. I can absolutely tone it down.
We probably need more kindergarten teacher energy, honestly.
Right. You only got to tell me that but once.
I'm here for it. Speaking of things I'm here for, I would love to, if you could share with us a little bit about what we can learn, what you can expect from the Poisons We Drink. Like, what is it about? And what do you think are some key things that the audience should know before they pick it up?
Yeah, so The Poisons We Drink, I call it my practical magic meets Breaking Bad, and it is set in Washington, D.C. It follows a Black witch by the name of Venus Stoneheart. She runs an illegal love potion brewing operation, and so in this world, there are all different types of love potions. There's familial love potions, there's romantic love potions, and then there's also love potions where people can fall in love with an idea. And in Washington, D.C., an idea is a very powerful thing. And so when Venus's mother is murdered, she's offered the opportunity to avenge her mother's death, but she has to brew love potions where people can fall in love with an idea. But the group of people she has to get to drink the potions is actually politicians. So there's like a bill on the table and they're very indecisive about the bill. And so she has to brew those love potions so that they can fall in love with the idea to not vote for this bill. But there is a lot of backstabbing. There is a lot of front stabbing. There is politics. There is potions. There is family drama. There is just all around drama. It's just a very fun book.
Yeah. So when did this, you mentioned like sort of your, I guess, inspiration sort of. You talked about practical magic and Breaking Bad, but when did the idea first come into your head? And then what sorts of like influences did you kind of pick up along the way of developing the story?
Right. So it kind of started when for the 2016 elections. Election night, I went to sleep, Hillary was winning, and when I woke up, Trump won. And so that was like a shock to my system. And I live in Florida. I'm born and raised in Florida. And so it was hard for me to process the role that Florida played in that election. And so it bothered me. It was almost like going through stages of grief, and it was very difficult for me to process. And so a few months after the election in June, I just was just very stressed out about life and everything that was going on. And so I sat down and I was like, I'm going to watch my favorite movies that I used to watch as a child. And so one of the movies that I watched was Practical Magic. I watched it and I fell asleep. And as cliche as it sounds, I had a dream about a Black pink-haired girl that was doing something very, very, very awful. And something inside of her was talking her through doing this awful thing. And it stuck out in my mind. And when I woke up, I was like, I need to write her story. And so then because it happened when I had fallen asleep from Practical Magic. One thing about Practical Magic that I love is that all of the chaos in the story is caused by a love potion. The movie, the love potion causes all of the drama in the story. And so I was so obsessed by the idea that a love potion could cause so much drama, so much stress to everyone involved. And so I knew then and there that this black pink haired girl was going to be brewing love potions. And so I created the magic system and all of that. But then I was stuck with, well, I would love to set it in Florida, but it wouldn't make any sense. And so I was trying to figure out, well, um, where could I set this story? Because at that point, as I said, I had made the magic system, and one of the love potions was where someone could fall in love with an idea, and I knew that I wanted that to be like the centerpiece of the story. And it just clicked for me, like Washington DC. I'm going to set it in Washington, D.C., but I'm going to make it so that when people think about love potions, they think about, how pink it is, how pretty it is, how cute it is, how romantic it is. And I wanted to like turn that on its head. I wanted to make it as dark and grim as possible so that people could explore how vicious love potions can be and how love can make people do awful things.
That's so interesting. And one of the things that like I think really does come across in the book is how robust the magic system is in the poisons we drink. And there are so many different magical abilities. There's so many different ways in which that magic can be harnessed, and then the consequences to using that magic, which vary but also are known and accepted by the Witcher community. The ways in which to replenish and strengthen the magic. How did you approach creating that system, and how did you get, how far like in depth did you get in the creation of that system? Because it feels like there is not only like a very robust magical system, but there is like an like you in your head, whether it comes off on the page or not, know like every answer to every question about this magical system that anyone could possibly think of.
So the magic system, I approached it in two parts. Because brewing was going to be its own piece, I kind of treated the brewing magic system, and then the rest of the Witcher magic system differently. For the brewing magic system, I really liked the process in Breaking Bad, and I was like, that would be so cool if it was like this very like creating drugs type process for the brewing magic system. And so that's kind of how that played out. But for the rest of the magic system, I actually thought about all of the challenges that the Black community has, and I turned those things into the magic system, and then it was just kind of like, it kind of all fell into place. So like, for instance, the magic abilities. Okay, so there's the birthright, which is like magic powers that, which all Witchers, could have. But then there's a calling. And so everyone's calling in the book, it's reflective of something that Black folk have to deal with. So for instance, Venus, she's a negative empath. And that was just to explore like how, as Black women, Black females, Black girls, how we're always placed in situations where people just kind of like dump. They dump all of their trauma, and they vent on us, and we're just there to just listen, even though we've got our own stuff going on, and we just keep quiet and we listen, and we don't say anything because we don't want to be a burden upon other people. And so we just accept all of the negativity that's coming our way, even if it's not actually directed at us. We're the person that kind of just helps people pick up the pieces while they're going through whatever they're going through. So that's Venus. That's one part of Venus's magic. The other part of Venus's magic, she has a dark sentient magic that's supposed to represent the anger, how we're always having to bottle up our anger, and the things that we want to say and the things that we want to do, we hold it all in several parts in the book. That which her magic is called, it expresses it gets to jump out and throw hands at people, and there's always consequences to that. And that was just kind of to explore that piece. Her sister Janice has the ability to open up doorways. I wanted to give her that ability because it just shows that Black kids, Black people, we always pave a way. If there is no door in place with us, we will create a door out of nothing. And we will go through that door, and we will also help others find their way through that door. And so that was kind of her calling. her cousin Terrell has the ability to shapeshift, and the shapeshift is supposed to represent code switching. And throughout the story, he always struggles with his shapeshifting because he wants to be himself, but people want him to be other things. And so it was that kind of back and forth. For her uncle Bram, he has super strength, and there's always this negative view of how Black men are just so dangerous, and they hurt everyone that they touch, when Bram is actually one of the gentlest people in the entire book, and he is the most supportive, and he has the most wisdom, and he will tell it to you like it is while he's smoking his little Black and Mild. And so that was kind of how I wanted to approach that. And so the calling system, that's kind of how I wanted to approach it. For everything else, it just was, the reason why the magic system was robust is because it was actually supposed to be a 2-book series. It was actually supposed to be a 2-book series, but I was asked to turn it into 1 book. And so the magic system was supposed to be spread out throughout 2 books. But when I was asked to turn it into 1 book, I was like, wow, okay, I got to try and fit this all in. And so that's kind of why it was robust. There were certain things in the story that was just supposed to be spread out throughout 2 books. So yeah. So for the consequences, for the magic system, I just wanted, when growing up, when you read about magic, there never felt like there was any consequences to that magic. And I've always been fascinated by the idea of giving and taking, or there's a lot of loss and very little win. And so that was just supposed to be symbolic of just how Black folk operate in society. We give and give and give, and then there's consequences to the giving. And so I kind of wanted to have that price that needed to be paid for magic, and for replenishing or strengthening magic. I just wanted to come up with different ways. Now, granted, I'm a Southerner, so some of the ways that Venus and other characters replenish their magic is tea. I love a good sweet tea. I love a good hot tea. So it was just kind of one of the ways, like, I wanted to create like a replenishing tea so that they're able to refill their magic, because tea is just such a comforting thing.
I had this thought though, because I'm taller. So when they were doing the baths, I was like, that has to be so annoying. I can never fit comfortably into a bath. Like, I was like, they're already marginalized, and they have to be buying these like specialized, those like, those deep tubs, like those, like, when you walk into a rich person's bathroom and you're like, that's the bath I need, but it's not.
Really good point. That's a really good point. But for the bath, as I said, I'm a Southerner, so down here, the bath is supposed to represent like a baptism. Like, it's just, they're supposed to just wash away all of their impurities, and the impurities, shrivel up the flowers or change the color of the water, and then it just goes down the drain, and then you do it again every month. So the baths that they take, that was kind of supposed to be representative of that. But yeah, that's a really good point. I know there's one scene in the book where Venus and
that one scene where she's looking, they're somewhere already in the bath, and she's thinking, oh.
Yes, that's one of my favorite scenes, where she's like, how am I gonna fit in this tub with this person? And they just make it work. But it was supposed to represent like her vulnerability, because even though she's naked in the scene, she's bare, because they talk about a lot of different things that she has to force herself to confront.
Yeah, thanks for all that explanation. And I love that, like, as you were talking about like the creation of the story, and like where you were starting with like love potions and like just potions themselves, that thought around being in love with an idea, and how that naturally brought you into putting and positioning the story within the DMV area. And especially because it's the DMV area, there's a lot of political factors in that and voices that are there. And in the story, it's a time of continued political unrest that's been happening for like decades. So it would be great if you could talk a little bit about, as you were writing in, like the concept of like political unrest, potion making, crafting love around ideas, how the setting was involved in the creation of character dynamics, and as well as that potion aspect as well.
Setting it in the DMV during a continual time of unrest. And so once I knew that I wanted to set it in Washington, D.C., I realized that I really did not know a lot about the DMV. I learned a lot of research. And one of the things that I learned along the way was I didn't know that Washington, D.C. was a predominantly Black town. And so that actually was a big shock for me, but it made so much sense. And so it was perfect because once I realized that Washington, D.C. was a predominantly Black town, but like most of the general population in the country is just used to the pristine monuments and the downtown shopping and the museums and the the memorials and the cemeteries. And then there's this entire other side of Washington, D.C., where it has historical Black neighborhoods and it has so much history. And it kind of lives in the shadow of what Washington, D.C. has been set up to be. And so I was very fascinated by the relationship that the city itself and the Black folk that live in the city. I was so fascinated by the relationship and the back and forth between that. And there's just so much rich history to that. So it just made so much sense, since witchers are supposed to be a stand-in for Black folk. It just kind of slotted in perfectly why it made sense for it to be in Washington, D.C. Because even now, a lot of people don't realize that Black folk that live in Washington, D.C., they are fighting a lot of different laws, local laws that are affecting their neighborhoods, and how there is an issue of gentrification in Washington, D.C., where people are being pushed out of their neighborhoods, and slowly it's becoming something very unrecognizable after they injected all of this history to make those areas what it was, and then they're being shooed away. So it just made so much sense to put it in Washington, D.C., and have that duality to it. What we know DC to be on a postcard, and then what the backside of that postcard really is. So having that continued unrest, I was very fascinated by how there's just this constant need for change. There's this constant need for change, and we keep saying the same things over and over and over again, but it doesn't matter what the topic is. It's still the same. The process is still the same. Everyone still takes to the streets, and they just want to be heard. And so I kind of wanted to explore that, having characters that are on two different sides of the revolution. You have the people that just do not care because they're just sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they feel like nothing can be done. And then you have the other side where people are so passionate about it that they would do anything to change the world. And so I kind of wanted that pull, that back and forth between the two of them, and how it reflects with humans and witchers. It's just witchers were, as I said, were a stand-in for Black folk, and then humans were a stand-in for white folk. And so it's funny because I've had so many people come up to me and say, wow, this story, it reminds me of so much what's happening in this country over here or this country over there. Did you write it because of that? And it's like, no, baby, I wrote it because I'm Black in America. And so it's so interesting that a lot of people see parallels in other countries, but they don't see the parallel in this country. Like, we don't already have things going on.
Yeah.
And so when I told them, they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like, 2020 wasn't that long ago. The LBM protests weren't that long ago, or the protests all before that. And so it is interesting that people are able to find parallels in other countries. But I wanted to write the story so that people could see parallels in this country. We have our own issues going on here that have been ongoing for a very, very long time. And so that's kind of how I wanted to explore the relationship between humans and witchers, especially in regards to like segregation or, it being a police state, and what it feels to exist like that, what it feels to exist as a person in a society that does not love you, but you
Yeah.
loved.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting that folks were not seeing the, like, I don't know, it just felt very obvious.
Yes, they were like,
The
"Wow."
parallels.
It's
But,
it's always obvious because you also are a Black woman
right,
in
I was
America.
gonna say maybe that's what it is.
Because
I was like,
I am
no, I
always
thought it was
shocked when I'm
pretty.
like, you didn't catch that? Oh, okay.
It was
Yeah.
very, very fascinating. And it's like, I'm glad that you guys are able to find the parallels, but it's also very important that I'm not trying to copy things that are happening around the world. I'm writing things that I know because I was born and raised here. And so it gave a lot of people who have came up to me a lot to think about, because they thought that it was happening somewhere else. And it's like, no, no, it's not. We still actually deal with segregation. We still actually deal with all these problems. It's just that it's not a buzzworthy topic for a lot of people. And so therefore they think it doesn't exist just because they don't hear about it or it's not trending.
Hopefully that leads to like a conversation of people thinking about like the ways that oppression is linked across the world. Like it's not like it's like what happens in one place is only happening there. Like that's a deeper conversation about who's in power and how they work. Speaking of people who are in power and how they work, that is a big aspect of like the city and town and area of like the DMV as well, is that you have a lot of political legacies, and they may be the activist side, like the Stonehearts and the others, and you might have like the ones who are in the shadows, like puppet mastering, like the Sharmas, and then you have like the the actual politics, like the people who are political figures and stuff like that, with the Muncies and Tillys, etc. Why did you make sure that those legacies were like intrinsically tied to the like actual political environment? Like you didn't have to like make all these like put some members in there. And why was that like important to like the driving the story forward, but also possibly just like character dynamic and development?
So the reason why I had multiple families in the story is because I kind of just wanted to show the different aspects of familial love. That was actually the core for everything. Like every single family had their own familial love dynamics, even though for some families it didn't feel like love. And so, like for the Stonehearts, I really wanted to represent how you have a lot of Black folk that are almost like in servitude positions, or they're hustling and they're grinding and they're providing a product. And so this responsibility, this family business, it passes down from generation to generation, whether you like it or not. And maybe that's more of at least down here in the South, but I'm sure it's, it's prevalent everywhere. It's relevant everywhere. But I wanted to represent that aspect of it. I'm not going to say it's like a generational curse, but it's just a responsibility that is just passed on, and how it affects each person, even though they do not want to do that thing, and the sacrifices that occur when they are passed on a responsibility. So with Venus, she has to run an illegal love potion brewing operation that has been in her generation for years. It's not her sister, it's not her aunt, it's her. She's the next person that does it. And so I kind of wanted to explore the dynamics of that, and then also explore the dynamics of if you have parents that are activists, one that laid down their life, and then the other one that walked away because her life was changed by that activism. I wanted to kind of explore like that remaining parent, what would it be like if they raised their children? And so that's kind of how Venus and her sister Janice split off into different directions. Venus could care less about politics. She sees no good in it. And then you have Janice. She cares about politics and she sees the value in it. And because of that, there's a lot of conflict. For the Sharmas, I really wanted to explore what it was like for people to, as you said, be able to like pull puppet strings in the shadows and have a lot of power. Because out of all of the families, I feel like that family is probably the most powerful family in Washington, D.C. Even though one was public facing and the other one it was behind the scenes, they still had a secondary life where they were really about that life, and they were doing what needed to be done for what they felt was best for their people, for the Witchers. And it kind of explores how not black women, but women of color in general, and black women, but women in color overall, because the Shermans are not black. But women in color overall are always like the backbone of whatever movement, whether you see them or you don't see them. They're always invisible people. They're always, in the shadows, in the background, doing what needs to be done, even if you do not know their face, even if you do not know their name. And so I kind of wanted to explore that, but I also wanted to explore that their version of activism is more on the morally gray side. They don't mind spilling blood, and they don't mind throwing hands, and they don't mind hurting people, because it's kind of like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and they're very effective and brutal in that regard. As for the Mountsies, I wanted to kind of explore the other side of it, where you have a politician that is in the spotlight, and he's considered like the golden boy of politics, but he's not a good person because he's just as indecisive as the other politicians. He has to be convinced to want to do right. And I kind of wanted to explore that dynamic of when you there's a lot of people that view politicians in a public light, but when they're indecisive on very important things that are important to their constituents, then they're not a good politician. We can't pick and choose. Like, okay, they voted well on this thing over here, but this other big thing they didn't, or they stayed quiet and they just voted present. That means that they're not a good politician. But it kind of just explores like how people view politicians and how they move through the world. And then you have his father, who is a little piece of the story. He wants to get back into his son's good graces, and he's willing to do anything possible to get that done. So I kind of just wanted to explore that dynamic.
Yeah, I feel like that's dope. Like there's just so many moving pieces in the story that it's like cool to like see your thought process behind it and like kind of how it came together. You talked a little bit about this before when we were talking about magic systems, in terms of like Venus's, like her magical abilities and like what they represent and where the inspiration for those came from. But also just talking about her like character and her arc. She kind of starts the story keeping her head down, like you said, like trying to stay out of politics, suppressing like her emotions as well as others that are being forced on her. And then kind of as the story goes along, she learns to like embrace and weaponize those emotions. And so how did you approach writing her arc, and why was it important to show her embracing and like channeling her anger?
So I have PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and so Venus's arc, it's not me, but I put a lot of my experience into how she moves through the story, especially as like I'm an only child, but she's an eldest daughter, and how there is this responsibility, especially when you're like the oldest, or when you are the only daughter of the family or what have you. There's always like this weight of responsibility that everyone puts onto you, and there's expectations. Well, even as only children, there's this very high expectation, and so her mother teaches her to keep her head down, because if you keep your head down and you suppress your feelings, then that's power, because no one can use those feelings against you. And so that's kind of how she moves through the story. But after her mother dies, there is this switch of it does not benefit me to continue to suppress my feelings. And so when she's introduced to Matrika Sharma, the Grand Witcher, Matrika Sharma is like the other side of a coin that her mother was. Her mother was telling her to keep her head down. That's how you can maintain power. And then Matrika, she's telling her to keep her head up and say what you need to say, and stop pitying yourself, and stop doing this and stop doing that. And so, once she meets Matrika and she starts speaking up more, she starts paying attention to other people's business other than her own more. She starts pulling strings, and she starts doing a lot of the things that she did not previously do, because Matrika really influenced her and helped her realize that she needs to embrace her anger, because her anger is valid. And so how I approached her arc was, I really wanted to show Black girls, Black boys, Black children in general, that your anger is valid. We move through society teaching Black kids that their anger is a sin, while everyone else gets to express their anger outwardly. We have to contain it. We're not allowed to be frustrated. We're not allowed to show our frustration. We're not allowed to show our annoyance. We're not allowed to show our discomfort. We're not allowed to show our anger, because everyone else reacts when we do that. And so we have to teach our kids what? Keep your face neutral. Keep your head down. Keep quiet. Make sure you show your hands. Make sure everyone knows that you're not a threat. So and as a teacher, because I considered the kids that I taught while I was writing the story, my Black little boys, my Black girls, my Black kids, I just thought about how I treated them in my classroom, because I understood them at a molecular level. And then, when they left my classroom, because I told them that it was okay to be angry, and it's okay to be frustrated, and it's okay to voice your opinions. And then when they moved through school, I would always get told, oh, he turned out being bad. He's always saying how he feels. He's always angry. He doesn't know how to do this. He doesn't know. And so that was very frustrating, because it's like, but you let the white kids do it. You let the white kids voice their opinions, and you let the white kids show that they're angry, and you let the white kids stomp around the classroom, and you let the white kids throw their backpacks down. But a Black child can't do it. And so the same thing that Black children are doing and white children are doing, the Black child is punished and the white child is not. The Black child gets sent out the classroom or get a referral, and then the white child gets to stay in the classroom. And so I kind of wanted to, especially when it comes to politics, that your anger is valid, and that when you tap into that anger, that anger is valid. It's justified, and it's okay even if the anger isn't justified. Anger is anger. You feel how you want to feel. But I kind of wanted to approach it like that, because if you exist in a world where people don't love you, then you're allowed to be as angry as you want to be, because your silence, your obedience, all of that, that is not owed to anybody. That is not owed to anybody. And so that's kind of how I approached it. Because at the beginning of the story, Venus is very, very obedient to her mother, obedient to all the adults, and she listens to what they say as she's moving through the story. And then once her main figure is gone, her when her mother is gone, then she begins to take matters into her own hands, even if other people are pulling her puppet strings. And so it's just also teaching the kids how it's okay to be independent as well. And to be able to move through society. You're allowed to be your own person. You're allowed to be angry. And so that's kind of how I approached her embracing her anger. And then it also explored her mental illness, because she does have mental illnesses. She does have anxiety. She does have PTSD. She does have depression. And it was kind of one of those things where I wanted her to embrace her anger, because the anger was like a byproduct of her mental illnesses, and then her situation in society. And in the Black community, mental health is just, it's treated very, very poorly. And so I kind of just wanted to explore. And so that's why throughout the story, people are telling her, like, it's okay to be angry. If you need help, ask for help. Like, we're here, like, we'll literally do anything that you want us to do. We don't have to do everything alone. So that's kind of how I approached her art.
Here on Wizard Team, it's no surprise that we love books. We also love supporting the independent bookstores.
With our bookshop affiliate link, you can not only get all the books on your TBR, but you can support indie bookstores and B&C at the same time.
And if you're not sure what you want, that ain't no problem. Check out our The Plot Thickens list, full of recommendations from none other than Porshèa herself.
Head to www.bookshop.org/shop/BlackNerdsCreate to treat your shelves.
Treat your shelves!
Oh, that's nice. That's clever.
Oh my goodness.
That's clever.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 45% off select styles, plus a professional measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
I think that's really fascinating too, especially when you're talking about like how she was like obedient to her mother, partially because I always get this sense of like children kind of not rebelling, but like actively trying to not do the things that like their parents did that would, upset them or they didn't agree with. And it's really interesting how like immediately people are like, you're just like your mom. And she's like, yeah. Like, even though she was, kind of, I mean, she's not blind to like how being obedient to her mom made her feel. That just like spirals into another question about like family in general. And it's such a big theme in this book, especially like the familial presence that, or the presence that the family has in Venus's life, and like the different familial relationships like that she has with, her uncle, who you said like is like the softest person, though he has super strength and has to be very careful with how he like touches his family. Her mother, but then like her sister and her cousin who, so like the generational kind of, where they find refuge and things like that too. So I'm wondering like what made you want to center family in this story, and like how with Venus's like hyper independent, unwillingness to ask for help kind of nature that like plays out with all of these central familial figures in her life.
You know, I, having read YA for so long, it always really, or even just like watching TV shows, movies, Disney movies, I was always just really fascinated how in a lot of stories there aren't any family figures. There's not anyone in that person's family. They just kind of move through the story by themselves, and they meet friends that may become their found family. And though that's very, very fascinating, I was even more fascinated by the idea of, well, what if it's a fantasy and the family is a big part of the story? You really don't get to see that nowadays. It's very much the character against the world, and their family really isn't there. And even though it's very cliche that her mother dies or that she's an orphan, I really wanted to explore, like, okay, yes, she's an orphan, but she still has her sister, she still has her cousin, she still has her aunt, she still has her uncle, she still has her familiars, and she has all these people surrounding her. She chooses to be hyper independent because she was taught, she was taught, and it was assimilated. She had to assimilate that if she says something, then she might become a burden to someone else. And so she doesn't ask anyone for anything. And that's something that is very, 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 it's something that a lot of Black girls and women do, is that we might have a support system, but we still do everything independently because, one, we're either afraid of a no, or two, we're afraid of being a burden to someone else. And so that's kind of why she became hyper independent, because you can always rely on yourself at the end of the day. But I wanted family to be very, very big. And I also wanted to, beyond a mother and a father, relationships with a mother and father, I wanted to explore, sisterly love. It's very, very common, but I almost never see cousin relationships, especially in fantasies. And so, like, where I'm from, your cousin is like another sibling, and they're your best friend. They're your best friend that is in your family. You are blood. You are blood. And if you get on my nerves, I am telling your mama. So, like, I grew up, my cousins they were like my big brothers. And so that's why the relationship, I decided not to give Venus aside from Presley. I decided not to give Venus like a whole bunch of different best friends. She has, a childhood best friend, and then she has her flesh and blood best friend. And that's why Venus, out of all of the other characters in the story, she's a very, very vulnerable with Terrell, because they constantly check each other. And there's just, I don't know, like, for anybody that has a cousin, you always got that one cousin that will check you and you will check them, and they're literally the only one that can say some reckless stuff in your face, and you're not going to do anything about it. You'll bicker.
I'm going to just say, this is hilarious. So Robyn and I are actually cousins, like blood,
really?
like, and best friends, and that's part of it. That's why we're like laughing, because it's literally.
Unfortunately, not often do I get to check Bayana.
Oh, see?
But I will.
She does.
Once given the opportunity.
Listen,
it just doesn't show up that often.
That is so cool. I mean, I love cousin relationships. It's just cousin relationships are just so much fun. And so that's why, like, I really wanted to keep Venus and Terrell's relationship in the story, because they are kind of like two sides to the same coin. They're both struggling with their magic, but they have to approach it in different ways. And they keep each other at, well, Terrell keeps Venus accountable. Venus tries to keep Terrell accountable. But like, some of my favorite scenes in the entire story are scenes that have Venus and Terrell. There is a seance scene. That's one of my favorite scenes in the book. There's a scene where Venus and Terrell, they have to go to a restaurant and to pretend to be people that they're not. Like some of my favorite chapters, my favorite scenes and how Venus grows are between Venus and Terrell. And so I definitely wanted to keep that cousin relationship, because that's like your built-in flesh and blood best friend. And so for aunts, I felt like that was very, very important, because I mean, like, everybody has that one aunt that she has a gold tooth. Well, at least mine do. And they keep it real, and they're very supportive. They're like a second mom. And I wanted to explore that a little bit. But the main person, one of the main people in her family, is Bram. I feel like I love Venus and her uncle Bram, and he's actually one of the first characters that's introduced in the story. And I kind of wanted, when I introduced him in chapter 0, I wanted people to see him through Mr. Mouse's eyes. He's terrified of Bram. He thinks that Bram is going to hurt him. He thinks that Bram is going to do this and Bram is going to do that. And so there's this expectation, like, oh my God, it's this big, scary black man, and he's going to do something horrible to me. And then in the very next chapter, he's reading the paper. He's calling people Pinky. He's drinking his coffee. He's wearing basketball shorts and slippers and a satin robe. And he's a completely different person. And he's the sweetest person one of the sweetest people in the entire story. And so it's just that duality of, like, just having that uncle in your life that just bestows pieces of wisdom. And so that's kind of how I approached the familial family aspect, and why family is important in Black stories, and that it's okay to write stories where Black kids have to go off on their own adventures and learn things, but it's also important to have stories where they have adventures with their family.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that, and also putting input for what your figureheads in your head were as you were writing them, like how they came from your own family members. That actually like makes that feel more relatable. And like I too am like the auntie with the gold tooth, and like how she's the one where you're gonna have like the conversations where alcohol might be involved, and it's not a big thing, right? Like it's part of the thing. And thinking about relatability, what I really enjoyed, also as an eldest daughter, was kind of seeing from the viewpoint of sometimes you're taught by example from adults that showing love is protection, and sometimes protection means withholding information from people who you're younger than you, so you're kind of like keeping stuff that they may not, like, this is too much for them, they don't really need to know this. Or sometimes it's that I don't know how to explain how we got here and how I'm part of that, so I'm gonna not talk about it. We're just look away, let's look somewhere else. And I see that a lot in this story. I also noticed that there's like between these dynamics and then the deals that people make, that like Venus makes specifically too, the way that magic works and has that like recoil component to it, and how like there's a lot like Venus like very much empathize with her poor eldest daughter just catching a bunch of recoil emotionally, physically, God.
Just so many strays.
So much.
Yeah, she caught a lot of strays. She caught a lot. I felt bad.
When I was reading, I was texting him like, "Can she just get a break?" Like,
I felt like the most like, I mean, it's sad, but like the most I was like, yeah, was like at the end when she was just like, everything hurts, and I was like, yeah, girl, you've been through it. I can't imagine that there is a piece of you that doesn't hurt.
Yeah. So in Black families, there will always be those deep, dark family secrets that you don't find out about until after that person is long gone. like, your cousin's not really your cousin. Your cousin's not really your cousin, or, or something like that. I was very, fascinated by how, as you said, adults will withhold information because they're either embarrassed by what they've done, or shamed, and then also as protection. And so because of that, I kind of wanted to explore it as almost like a generational curse type situation, because the previous generation did all of these things and they withheld all the information from the next generation, and so the next generation is reaping those consequences. They're reaping the consequences. So you did something and you kept it a secret to protect the next generation, but then all you did was not equip them, and so now there's consequences to that, and everybody in the story catches strays because of their parent withholding, or their grandparents or their uncles or their aunts. People were withholding information, and so all of the kids catch strays as a result. And so it's dealing with it's like the kids dealing with the aftermath of what their parents have done even before they were ever born. And so how the things that your parents do, no matter how young you are, before you even existed, can affect the next generation. And so now you have to clean up your parents' mess. And that happens in a lot of cases, even in the real world. It happens in a lot of cases where people have to pick up the pieces of things that their parents broke decades and decades ago when they were little or before they were even born. And so I really wanted to explore that, how there's always that fallout, and it doesn't matter how long that fallout is. It could be, decades later, the fallout can happen. And so kids have to pick up the pieces. And so when it comes to the deals Venus makes, a lot of the deals that Venus makes, she is forced into those deals. And it kind of explores how kids are they're told that they're given deals, but it's not a choice. It's not a choice. Kids are given like that illusion of, okay, you can do this or you can do this, but no, you really can't do that. So you really don't have a choice. And so Venus, when she makes deals, it's not really a deal. She's just accepting a demand. She's accepting a order. And because of that, a lot of deals end up turning out bad for her health. And so she has to move through the story with regret that she made those deals. And then some deals, they weren't even made for her. Somebody else kind of like just bargained her off. And so she has to deal with the consequences of that. So that's kind of how I wanted to play it. How a lot of kids, they're told that they have a choice, but they don't have a choice. And so they have to move, through their own story dealing with that. And so in regards to that, the love equals sacrifice, I really just wanted to explore how in the story there's 8 types of love. And when people think about love, they think about, it's a partnership and it's 50-50. And I really wanted to explore that not all love is 50-50. And some love is uneven. And if love is an uneven thing, then that means that someone had to make a sacrifice. So if my love is 70% and your love is 30%, that means that somebody had to make a sacrifice somewhere. And so it just explores, when it explores the different types of love, it explores that in a lot of cases, love is a sacrifice that we have to make. We have to give something up a lot of the times. To prove our love. And that's kind of like one of the quotes in the story. It says that love makes people do awful, messy things to show that you are, that you're worthy of it. And so if you're worthy of something, normally you had to make a sacrifice for that thing.
That quote may or may not have been the reason why that question exists.
Oh. That quote is on a special edition of there's a special edition of the book coming out, and that was the quote that I wanted them to put on the cover, because it kind of just one of the quotes that just kind of sums up the story, that just, it doesn't matter what type of love you have or what type of love you drink down. Love is a really awful, messy thing, and I kind of just wanted to explore the other side of that.
So, you know, we talked about like adults not quite sharing everything that they could or should. But we also do get in the story like different characters dropping pearls of wisdom. A lot of them are hints, not necessarily like straightforward, for different reasons. Like some because they still want to hide things, and others because they just like cannot say in a straightforward way. And like through the story, Venus is kind of like deciphering these. A couple of them, like for example, blood money always comes with veins. And in this world, you have to yell in the streets or whisper in ears to be heard. Why was it important for Venus to get these clues and this insight of what's to come? And then how likely is it for her to like carry those quotes and like lessons, you know, in the fictional future?
Yeah, so those two quotes in particular is actually from one character, and she's supposed to be the foil to Venus's mother. So Matrika, as I said, she's the one that tells Venus to keep her head up, to say how she feels, to don't be afraid, to back down, and then as where her mother is telling her something completely different. And so Matrika is just such an interesting character because Matrika is a motherly figure that doesn't want to be a mother. And so she gives Venus a lot of wisdom that Matrika doesn't give to other characters in her family that could potentially be her family. And so Matrika kind of takes Venus under her wing, but it's important because it's like, you know that saying of, it doesn't matter who the messenger is. Did you get the message? Like, that's kind of what it was. Like, there are characters in the story that are really bad for Venus's health, but they drop a lot of wisdom along the way. And when Venus receives that, she's like, damn, I hate you. But you're right. but there's a few times where like Venus has to stop and be like, damn. Like, there's a scene between Venus and another character named Nisha, and Nisha says, big sisters carry the weight of the world on their shoulders so their little sisters don't feel the burden. And like Venus wants to kill Nisha, but in that moment she's like, damn, you're right. And so it's kind of one of those things where it doesn't matter who the messenger is, as long as you get the message, you can learn something from that person, because it's kind of one of those, some people are here for a reason and some people are here for a season. It was kind of like that. So that's why different people through the story, doesn't matter if they were family or not, Witcher or not, they tell Venus and they give Venus a lot of advice, and Venus either accepts it right away or she doesn't realize it until much later down the road, like, damn, they're right. So I kind of wanted to just explore that don't discredit somebody just because you don't like them, because they might say something that will be helpful to you later on down the line. And so for the question about how would she carry those quotes to her with her off the page throughout her life, I think because Venus went through a lot in the story, baby girl went through a lot. I think that she's going to carry a lot of stuff off the page. As a matter of fact, she might take a duffel bag and take a lot of valuable lessons off the page. Because I actually, ended it on like a very open note. So I do think that Venus at the end of the story came off much, much wiser. And so, she recognized, I think one of the biggest things about Venus is that at the end of the story, she recognizes, even if she didn't like the person, why they did the things that they did. And she even admits, I understand why they did it. And if I was them, I would do it too. And so I feel like that was kind of like the biggest thing in the story is I wouldn't do that. I would never do that. You're an awful person. And then at the end of the story, be like, you know what? Love is a very awful thing. And if I were you, I would do the exact same that you did if love was the reason. And so I feel like she would take a lot of things off of the page, especially like those instances where not everything is what they appear to be, because a lot of people said that they were very caught off guard by some of the plot twists that were in the story. And so I think Venus's biggest lesson would be don't judge a book by its cover. That would be the biggest one. And so yeah, she would take a lot of different quotes off of the page, especially since there's still a lot of work to be done. And at the end of the story, Venus becomes a very, very powerful person. She had magic in the beginning, but at the very end, she becomes a powerful person, whether she wants to or not. And so because of that, a lot of the quotes that she received were from very powerful people. So that's kind of like her roadmap so that she can continue building the world that she and her and her crew want to see.
I will say, I thought it was something that didn't really catch on until the end of the book, how many of the powerful people, and not even just, and maybe not like overall power in like the world, but power in like Venus's story and what was going on with Venus, were not the people that we thought at the beginning. I know that there's a quote about like power and magic not being the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just I thought it was like really brilliant how like there was just these little moments in which you're like, oh, so you actually are not as powerful, or your power comes from someone else who is like working behind the scenes or quieter about it. And so I thought that was just, there's no question there. Just I thought it was brilliant.
Well, you're good. Yeah. So that was very like once I figured out it when I was writing the story, and I was like, okay, I kept confusing magic and power. I kept using them interchangeably. And so then when I was rewriting the story, I was like, well, technically the magic and the power are two separate things. And so it kind of reworked for me, like, oh, it kind of opened up a different layer of the story for me. And so, that's why, as the quote says, there's a difference between magic and power. And even on the book, it says the only thing more dangerous than magic is power. And so it's one of the things that I wanted to explore was that the people that talk the loudest in your face are probably the ones with the least amount of power. And the ones that are the quietest and the ones that are behind the scenes, they're the ones with the most power. And so, as you said, there were people in the story that you thought were the most powerful, but then there was another person behind them pulling the strings, and then another person behind them pulling the strings. And so that was very fun to play with. Some of my favorite plot twists are from like who is really the person behind the person in that aspect. So
yeah, it's like whose line is it anyway, really? Like it's very clear. Like I think I did also really enjoy that aspect of it all, because there were, not only was it like it was like a diversion, but also it's like, oh, like what is there to hide if they're putting a front person so that you're not noticing what they're doing over here on the side as much. That was like the really cool part about it. So thanks for noting that, Robyn, too.
You. Yeah, I just wanted to. I really want it to be like there's always someone in front of the actual powerful person, and that true power is wielded by the quietest people. And so that's why like the dynamic between Misha and Matrika, or the dynamic between Venus and her mother, or the dynamic between other people in the story, it was kind of one of those things. There's always someone behind the other person, and it was interesting exploring the power dynamics, not just between Venus and the person that's standing in front of her and the actual powerful person, but like the power dynamics between the person and the person that's actually pulling the strings behind them.
And I don't want to put us over time, but I did have a follow-up question about like the love thing and Janice specifically, her being the younger sister, to have like younger sister justice moment. When it comes to like that whole like withholding of information and protection as love and that sacrifice thing, it feels like Janice is seeing it and is like very like validly pissed at Venus for perpetuating it, even though Venus is continually hurt by it. And I wondered if I mean, I feel like a natural younger sibling kind of reaction is like, you're doing the same thing that you got hurt by, and you're doing it to me, and I thought we were good. What's happening, kind of thing. How much did you put into like that aspect, and then also with like Presley and how Venus and Presley end up having moments of that?
Yeah. So I'm an only child, but my mother is the youngest of 6. And so I based Venus and Janice's relationship on the relationship between my mother, who's the youngest child, and her older sisters. And so I was yeah, sorry, Mom. I was like, it was kind of like one of those things where it's learned behavior, because if the previous generation did it and that's what you see and that's what you know, then you're going to do it yourself. And then there's still going to be consequences to it. And like Venus and Janice, they hold secrets from each other, but the secrets are different weight. And so it's easy for one to forgive the other than the other to forgive the other one, because each secret has its own weight. And I love sister dynamics. I love Black sister dynamics. I feel like Black sister dynamics are so complex and it just has so many different layers. So that withholding information as a form of protection, it was weaponized against both of them, because when Janice held a secret, something bad happened to Venus. something bad happened to Venus. And when Venus held a secret, it had a different weight because it involved someone completely different, instead of just Janice holding a secret that was just impacting her. And as for Venus and Presley, I love their relationship. And I love their relationship. There was a lot of different, they both had secrets. And that's why in the story, towards the very end, Venus is confronted about all of the secrets from everyone. Like everyone throws hands at Venus at the end. Like there's a scene where it's like one person, boom, they leave. Next person, boom, they leave. Next person, like, I'm glad I'm the last one. Boom, they leave. So then Venus is just like out on the floor, like, oh my God, like they got me good. Like they went in one after another, like it was a buffet. And so but towards the end of the story, Venus and Presley, probably one of my favorite quotes from Presley, because they're both keeping secrets from each other. They say that if you're going to be a liar, you're going to be my liar. And so, yes, I was like, yes, absolutely. When that quote came, I was like, that is what sums up their relationship a lot, because they're both keeping secrets from each other. And even Venus is like, are you keeping secrets from me? They're like, yeah, of course. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite quotes from Presley, is when they said, if you're going to be my liar, if you're going to be a liar, you're going to be my liar, and I'll accept you as who you are.
I also loved that quote and that scene. So thank you so much for joining us and, going through this book with us. What can we expect from you next, if you can tell us, and what should our listeners be on the lookout for from you?
Yeah, so book 2, it's not set in the same world. It's a standalone in a different world, and it actually has art magic. Art magic. My main character is a painter, and she inherits a curse that involves painting, and so she has to go to Paris to learn more about her magic, and she encounters a lot of rich people that want her for themselves, and she learns that there are monsters, there are vampires that feed on things much worse than blood. And so that is book 2. And so that's a lot of fun. I'm drafting it right now.
Please don't make it too scary, because I would love to read that.
It's not, as a matter of fact, so like it's basically like I called it like Dorian Gray, like the portrait of Dorian Gray, because it explores like painting magic, and then it also but it explores it, and then it's also Eat the Rich. So it's that's like the main theme is it's eat the rich. The rich people eat people, but it's like, no, we're gonna eat the rich too. So that's basically the story. I'm having a lot of fun writing it. It's not announced yet. I don't think my publisher will mind if I they'll be okay. They will be perfectly okay. But yeah, so that is that story. It's a lot of fun because I've had The Poisons We Drink since 2017. So I've been working on this story for 7 years. 7 years, and I'm ready to dive into a completely different story with a different character. And Peter, my main character, Jupiter, but her nickname is Peter. She is completely different from Venus. Completely different from Venus. And she hands aren't thrown. She doesn't catch strays. Like she's like because she's like this, she's so valuable, like no one wants to hurt her. And I love that. I love Black girls being treasured, but it's like, well, if you're treasured, some treasures are kept locked away. So it's not always as fun. So yeah, that is what book 2 will be.
Oh, that's exciting. That is so Robyn coded.
Yeah, just like, let's fall in love with French boys.
It's extremely Robyn coded.
Let's have parties, and let's have magical art auctions, and it's just so much fun. Yeah.
Since you're still drafting it, I don't know if you know this or if you've been to Paris, but like they have the finest Black men. They're they're still men, but
they do.
They're dressed well. The skin glows. I don't know what they put in the water over there, but the Black Parisians are.
I've never seen them in the flesh, but I've seen them from afar on my computer, and I haven't met. I haven't. They're all so gorgeous, and that's why the love interest is a French Black boy. He's one of my favorite characters. He's so, I love him. And so you've got this Southern Black girl and this French Black boy, and they're gonna have a time. So yeah, I've never been to Paris. I've always wanted to go to Paris. So I can only write about Paris from Google Images. Google Images and Google Maps, just click down the road and take it from there.
You're manifesting your trip to Paris.
Oh, if I went to Paris,
you're threading it through the story.
That would
book tour will take you there, I'm sure.
So much fun if I went to Paris. I heard it's so beautiful, and I would love to go to Paris.
It's still a city, though,
Yeah, well, right.
With all that cities entail.
I would love to go to like the art theaters and go just eat. Just eat.
Yes, it's so. I had the best meals, and then the museums, and yep.
I'm gonna have to ask you for some recommendations but
I mean, the best meal I have, I'm still mad about it. I couldn't tell you. We were walking, and I was hungry. We were nearish the Eiffel Tower,
Near-ish.
Was it street food?
No, it was this beautiful little restaurant. There was like twinkle lights in it. I got I had a card, but I haven't been to Paris in years, and I've moved a couple times since then, and I couldn't tell you, but it was literally so good. I don't even know if it's still there. It was just a small, so good. So
I would, I love eating. See, I have family that's from New Orleans. That's the closest thing that I'll ever get to Paris. That's the closest thing I'll ever get to Paris.
No, manifest it.
I'm gonna try. But I don't have Paris money, so
it will come.
It will come.
Again, the manifestation.
Listen, I accept it. I receive it. Hands palms.
You don't even need to have Paris money. You just need to have your publisher understand the value of an international book tour.
Yes.
Listen, thank you. Absolutely. It's funny that you say that because The Poisons We Drink is going to be coming out in like a foreign country that I never would have thought of. And I would love to go to that country. So I'm like, yeah, I would love to go on like a little tour. So yeah.
Say it's research. It's research.
I can write it off on my taxes.
You sure can.
That part.
And you might even want to like look into like the French like government who does visas and stuff for art. I'm just saying, there's ways. There are ways.
Y'all giving me ideas.
There are ways.
You don't have me and my dogs with.
I would write like a very nice. Who is that? I mean, I'm a sports person, so this is not the person to write. But Thierry Henry is a Black French person. I'm sure that there's like a. Who's the actor that plays Lupin? Just send them a very nicely worded email about how you're writing this book and you love his portrayals in the movie so much that you just would love to be able to immerse yourself into the Black French culture and see what he does.
I
love that guy. I can't remember his name, but shoot your shot.
His name starts with an O. I think his name starts.
It does, like Omar.
I think it's Omar. Yeah, Omar Sy.
I love him.
I think Sy. Yeah,
Omar
Sy. But you want to know something? I would love to be in a situation like bring back like rich benefactors.
That's
like,
what I'm saying.
Like bring it like
patrons of the arts are patrons
of the
arts. What needs to be done?
Is that like come? I need like a Victorian man in a top hat to come and be like your uncle has died. He's left you
your long lost uncle.
You happen to be a Rockefeller. We're giving reparations. Here you go.
Like I need that. Like please, please come to my door and be like, your uncle has died. He's left you an estate in Scotland and like 5 million pounds. Thank you. Take me there.
One can dream.
One can only dream. But thank y'all so much. This was one of the best interviews. I hope I answered them questions. Sometimes I know I ramble. Actually, I know I ramble. I'm a Gemini. I know I ramble. But thank you so much for this opportunity.
Tangents are actually like a cornerstone of this. It's part of the brand.
Thanks for listening to this bonus episode of Wizard Team. Stay tuned in May as we start a mini-series where we discuss Black Panther Tales of Wakanda. This is going to be a special new bonus option that we're offering to listeners, as well as our special Patreon offer where you can join during the month of May for free as a BNC Baddie. BNC Baddie benefits include being able to join us for bonus recording episodes and regular recording episodes during the month of May for Wizard Team, as well as access to our Baddie chat within our Discord community. Be sure to join us through signing up through Patreon through May only for free. We're hoping this will have you join us for future episodes and bonus episode and regular recordings of Wizard Team. Also, the behind-the-scenes access that you can only get as a BNC Baddie on Patreon.